Hello, everyone. It's Liz. Welcome to Thursday. That means it's Hulu Day, and today is what to watch on Hulu. Hope everyone is doing well. At least it's starting to get nice and warm outside, although too warm for me in my case. Anything above 80 is terrible. So on to the picks. The first I'm going to recommend are two new shows that are on Hulu, and they're Hulu originals. The first I'm going to recommend is the show The Great, starring Nicholas Hoult and Elle Fanning. This is from one of the writers of not last year's 2018. Oh, that already seems so long ago. The Favorite. So if you were a fan of this, you might like this satirical, dark comedy take on the life of Catherine the Great. Elle Fanning is fantastic, but who I really love, not just in this, I loved him in The Favorite, and I just like seeing him in any movie at this point, is Nicholas Hoult. To think that the little boy from About a Boy would turn into be this much of a chameleon actor, I think if you'd gone back in time and told me that, I'd be like, nah, you're crazy. But he has really grown into being a great performer. So, I mean, Elle Fanning is a great performer as well, but he, I think, really excels at this strange, like the stuff that The Favorite and The Death of Stalin do, where they find humor in the dark absurdities and the banal evil of some of these figures. So definitely recommend The Favorite. The other Hulu show I'm going to recommend, this one isn't for everybody, Solar Opposites. So this is from Justin Roiland, who is the co-creator of the cult favorite. Actually, it's not even a cult favorite. It's a hit show with a very passionate following. Most of us are normal, I swear. Only a few of us went crazy over the Szechuan sauce, and I wasn't one of them. Anywho, Solar Opposites is really funny. We binged all 8 episodes very quickly last weekend when it came out, and I liked that it is not trying to be Rick and Morty. So if you're not a Rick and Morty fan, I would still say give this a shot, although it is a similar animation style. So if you just don't like that style of animation, this probably isn't for you. But I would say don't go in expecting something as dark as Rick and Morty. Go in expecting a more twisted version of Third Rock from the Sun. That is how someone else described it to me, and I think it's a very good way to describe it. Also, any animated show that references the movie Green Room immediately gets some points in my book. But this show has enough silliness in it and smarts to keep me invested. On to the movie recommendation. So, speaking of stuff that has a passionate cult following, first movie I'm recommending is Mr. America. So, if you're familiar with Tim Heidecker, you probably know Tim and Eric Awesome Show Great Job, or his online series On Cinema on Cinema. So, this ties into that. However, I am not a fan. I don't watch On Cinema, and I was able to follow this a lot. It's basically about a man trying to run for district attorney, and he's completely inept at it. I think I described when I saw the trailers. This looks like the War Room, the 1993 documentary about the Clinton campaign, only with incompetent people. And I find it's very funny. It's a good lampooning of these sort of campaign documentaries. And Tim Heidecker, I think, is great in it. It might be a little esoteric for some people, but again, I had no real knowledge of the series, and I still laughed. On to another comedy. We're going to go with The Last Word, starring Shirley MacLaine and Amanda Seyfried. It is not a great movie. It's pretty, I would say, standard plot. An old businesswoman finds out she's dying, hires a writer to write a oh my god, obituary. Again, no big surprises here. I kind of wish it was a better movie. However, Shirley MacLaine is just on fire in this, and I think anytime we have to savor Shirley MacLaine being herself and having the presence she has, we should cherish it. Up next is a indie darling that came out in the late 90s, Slums of Beverly Hills, starring Natasha Lyonne and Alan Arkin. I think it's a really good dramedy. I actually rewatched it a couple of years ago when I still had cable, and I think it overall holds up as a movie. The thing about comedies is they can become dated very quickly, but usually if there's dramatic elements to ground it, it ages a little bit better. But I think I actually appreciated it more now that I'm older because I think I saw it when I was a teenager and didn't kind of get some of what it was going for. But I still think it's a great movie. And if you've only seen Natasha Lyonne on something like Orange is the New Black or Russian Doll, this was one of her big breakout movies, that and But I'm a Cheerleader. So I definitely recommend watching this. Then we're going to sliding into darker movies. The first I'm going to recommend is Force Majeure. So, if you saw, back when we were allowed to go to theaters, remember theaters, everybody? I miss them. Anyway, the trailers for the Will Ferrell, Julia Louis-Dreyfus movie Downhill, about a man who sees an avalanche, grabs his phone, and runs away and leaves his family. That is a remake of this movie. So, this movie, I imagine, is better. Although, I don't know. Both those actors are pretty good. Anywho, if you didn't get to see Downhill or didn't want to, but still kind of find the general idea of that plot to be interesting, I would watch Force Majeure. It is the general main plot point, basically, father grabbed his iPhone and left his family, is explored both in some comedic terms and some dramatic. I don't want to give too much away about it, but it is a great watch, and I am a fan. On to one of the biggest movies of the late aughts and one of the few superhero movies to get any kind of Academy Award recommendation, Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. I would say good time to revisit this. We do have a new Batman coming out someday with Robert Pattinson, which I'm interested to see. Personally, my favorite Batman is Michael Keaton, but I think The Dark Knight is probably Nolan's best Batman film. Nolan took, rather than going kind of the comic route, Nolan took the route of let's completely ground this in reality. So all of these funny, zany villains now become very frightening, unhinged people. And I think overall it works. I think it kind of falls apart in Batman Begins and a little bit in The Dark Knight Rises. But The Dark Knight is basically what Nolan was trying to do perfected. And I have said this before, Nolan is a great director. He might be a little cold or clinical, but I think he is just a stickler for getting his scene right, having good mise en scène, having good composition. I think he's a perfectionist, but he is also a director who, as a creator, absolutely believes in the value of seeing a film on the big screen. And if you watch this movie, many of the action sequences are made to be seen in a multiplex. Doesn't mean they're not as good on a small screen. They are. But it is really nice to see a movie, especially in the era where studios are thinking, yeah, let's just do streaming now. Why do we need theaters? And even some viewers are like, I don't like to go to the movies. To see a director who so passionately makes films to be seen on a big screen, that needs to be cherished. And again, if there's one thing I'm really mad at COVID for, it's pushing back movies like Tenet. I was hyped for Tenet. Oh, probably going to be mad until I see it. But yes, watch The Dark Knight, and as I mentioned, got an Academy Award, Heath Ledger Best Supporting Actor for his role as the Joker, and probably the scariest iteration of the Joker. But again, if we're going to look at this in a real world lens, that is who the Joker would be. Although I actually still think Jack Nicholson kind of walked that fine line between deranged, unhinged villain and cartoon villain very well, but I kind of think if we were to meet someone like that in real life, he'd be a lot like Heath Ledger, and you don't want to meet someone like that in real life. On to our final film, and this is our most recent movie. It came out early this year. It was one of the movies that my partner and I actually got to go see in theaters. It is called The Lodge. It got a small release. I remember hearing some good buzz in the horror circles about it, so we decided to go. Riley Coe, I hope I'm saying her name right, is the main actress in this. She is engaged to a man who has two young children who, I am going to be very blunt here, are snots. And they all go to a cabin together. It's snowing. The father has to go back to town for work, so she is stuck with these kids, and things ensue. Power goes out. Food disappears. It is not a perfect movie, but it is, if you ever want to be like, hey, having to stay in my house a lot or not being able to go out to the mall as much as I like isn't that bad. This is a good movie about that because it's like, could be worse. I could be stuck in a snowbound in a house with no power and two creepy kids. It could always be worse, and films teach us that. And Riley Keough, the lead actress, I think is fantastic, and it has a final sequence you will not forget. Again, it's horror. It is not for everybody, and it is one of the darker movies I've seen in a while. But I also applaud the movie for going that dark. So hopefully you'll check out one of these movies, and I will be back tomorrow with Freebie Friday. Have a great day.